There's a guy in your neighborhood, maybe it's you. Maybe it's someone you recognize a little too clearly, who drives 20 minutes across town to fill up at the station that's 4 cents cheaper per gallon. He saves about $1.60. He spent 40 minutes of his Saturday doing it. He came home proud. That guy is broke. Not because he saves money, because he's playing a game where the only move is smaller and smaller losses. And if you clicked on this video, some part of you already suspects that extreme frugality, the price-comparing, never splurge version of being responsible with money, might actually be the thing quietly keeping you from building real wealth. Hit subscribe if you want to keep running the real math, because today we are going through exactly why the frugal mindset taken too far becomes a trap disguised as a virtue. Frugality is not the villain here. Let's be clear about that. Being smart with money is one of the most important financial muscles you can build. But there's a specific version of frugality, stress-driven, scarcity-brained, penny-obsessed, that crosses a line. And on the other side of that line, it stops being discipline and starts being destruction. Here's what actually happens inside a financially stressed brain. When you're anxious about money, your attention narrows. Research from behavioral economists, Sendhil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir, documented in their book Scarcity, shows that financial stress hijacks cognitive bandwidth. Your brain zooms into the small loss right in front of you and completely loses sight of the larger picture. So you spend 2 hours comparing prices on a kitchen appliance to save $11. You drive across town for cheaper gas, you feel productive, you feel responsible, but you just paid yourself $5.50 an hour and congratulated yourself for it. The latte factor, you've heard it, cut the coffee. Retire rich. It's one of the most famous pieces of personal finance advice ever given, and it's only half the story. The half nobody sells you is this. The latte isn't your problem. Your income ceiling is. If you spent the same energy that goes into cutting small expenses into growing what comes in, you'd have a fundamentally different financial life. Not because lattes are innocent, because the math only goes one direction when you're only playing defense. Here's the real argument, and I want you to sit with this one because it changed everything for me. There is a hard mathematical ceiling on how much you can save. It's 100% of your income. You cannot save more than you earn. Full stop. But there is no ceiling. Zero ceiling on what you can earn. None. That's not motivation. That's arithmetic. So let's run this live. Person A gets serious about frugality, cuts expenses hard, saves $300 a month, invests it at 8% annual return in 10 years, about $55,000. Respectable. Person B invests 200 hours over a year into a marketable skill, writing, coding, sales, design, whatever the market pays for, earns $500 more per month, invests that same 8%, 10 years, around $90,000, and that gap widens every single year after that because their income base is higher. Person A is playing the only game where the ceiling is built in from the start. This is what it means to play defense instead of offense. Cutting costs is defense, growing income is offense. You need both, but if the only move you're making is defense, you are losing a game you don't even know you're playing. Now, let's go somewhere more uncomfortable. Being cheap in the wrong places is expensive. Not metaphorically, literally. Financially expensive. There's a $97 course on a skill that's paying people 6 figures. You look at the price, you say, I can learn this on YouTube for free. You spend 4 times as long learning half as well. You delay by a year. What did that frugality cost you? The gym membership. $40 a month. You skip it. You tell yourself you'll work out at home. You don't work out at home. Your health slowly deteriorates. Preventable medical costs pile up. A gym membership, used consistently, is one of the highest ROI investments a working adult can make. Wealthy people understand this. They don't call it a luxury. The networking dinner, the industry conference, the professional association, these are the exact places where real opportunities, jobs, clients, collaborators, referrals actually live. Frugal people skip them. They call it being smart. The people who attend call it Tuesday. The difference in career trajectory over 10 years between someone who shows up to these things and someone who doesn't is not subtle. Wealthy people don't call these expenses. They call them investments. The framing is not semantics. The framing is the difference between someone who builds wealth and someone who protects what little they have. Now this one is the one that really stings. And it's backed by actual research, so I want you to hear it clearly. When your brain is consumed with financial worry, price calculating, optimizing every small purchase, it is not thinking about your next investment. It is not thinking about the side project that could double your income. It is not thinking about the conversation you should have with your manager about a raise. That mental bandwidth is finite. It doesn't regenerate the way you think it does. The research I mentioned earlier, Mullainathan and Schaffer's work, showed that people dealing with financial scarcity had cognitive performance equivalent to losing 13 IQ points. That's not a small number. That's the difference between your clearest thinking and a version of you running on fumes. Every time you stand in a grocery aisle for 4 minutes, deciding between 2 boxes of cereal that cost 30 cents differently, you are spending something far more precious than 30 cents. Warren Buffett has spoken about this directly. He designs his life to eliminate these decisions not because he's lazy, but because his mind is doing something far more valuable than optimizing 30-cent decisions. You don't have to be Warren Buffett to apply this principle. You just have to recognize that every micro-optimization you obsess over has a cognitive cost that gets quietly charged to the part of your brain that should be building your future. This one is going to be uncomfortable, but it matters, and I'm going to say it clearly. How you present yourself professionally is a signal to the market about what you're worth. That signal is being read constantly. You show up to client meetings underdressed because you're frugal. The client reads that, they price you accordingly. You refuse to invest in basic business tools, a decent website, a professional email, domain, design assets that look like you take your work seriously. The person you're trying to sell to opens your proposal and quietly adjusts their perception of your value. There's a story that circulates in marketing. Someone spent $5 on a logo and lost a $60,000 contract because the client assumed that someone who invested $5 in their brand would invest the same energy in their client's project. Maybe this story is exaggerated. The principle is not when you position yourself cheaply in your appearance, your tools, your brand, your professional environment. You are not being humble. You are not being smart. You are sending a price signal to everyone who encounters you, and most of them will take you at your word. Okay? Here's the part where I stop challenging you and start handing you something useful. Because none of this means spend recklessly. It means spend right. Here is the actual filter. Be ruthlessly frugal on liabilities. Fancy car you can't afford. Impulsive restaurant meals that aren't real experiences, just convenient ones. Subscriptions that auto-renew while you sleep, cut those without mercy. But spend freely, even generously, on assets, skills that increase your earning power, health investments that keep you functional and clear, tools that save you time, relationships and environments that accelerate your opportunities. The biggest lever is not your daily coffee. It is your fixed expenses, housing, above everything. If your housing costs are eating 40 or 50% of your take-home, no amount of coupon clipping rescues that math cut big first. Then automate your savings, so the decision is already made before your fingers touch the money. Whatever remains, you spend without guilt. That guilt-free spending is not a reward. It is the whole point of building the system. One question, that's all you need. Before every significant purchase, ask yourself, does this make me money, save me time, or protect my health? If the answer is yes, it earns its place. If the answer is no, cut it without drama. That filter does more work than any budgeting spreadsheet ever will. I want to circle back to where we started. Frugal stays broke. That's the thumbnail. That's the provocation. But here's what it actually means. Frugal stays broke when frugality is the only strategy. When it replaces offense with defense. When it treats every dollar going out as a loss instead of asking whether that dollar could come back as 5. The version of you that builds real wealth is not the version that finds the cheapest option for everything. It's the version that gets precise about what deserves to be cheap and what deserves to be invested in. This week, one thing. Identify one area where you have been too frugal, not irresponsibly so. Just quietly too cheap in a way that has been costing you more than it saved you. Name it, write it down, then decide what you're going to do about it. Drop a like if this landed. Comment below and tell me, what's the one thing you've been too frugal about? Next week, we are going into the 3 expenses that wealthy people never cut, no matter what their net worth is. You don't want to miss that.